Welcome to the Divergent Hope Podcast. This is a place where we can have open and honest discussion about all the different ways we can explore our relationship with God through Jesus Christ. Hosted by Laurel. Let's get into today's episode.
Hey podcasters, welcome back to Divergent Hope. We're really excited to continue talking today about the spiritual practice of play, which is what we've been doing for the last couple of episodes. And today we have with us again, we are so privileged and excited to have with us again, Daniel Yoong, who, yes, he was on the last podcast, but we're switching gears. No pun intended with the motorcycle thing, although it doesn't really apply to music. We're switching gears from riding motorcycles to playing and listening to music as a spiritual practice. And today, Daniel's going to talk to us about that. Welcome, Daniel. Yay.
Hi. Good to be here again. 2 out of 3 for spiritual practices.
I love it. You are just, I tell you, you're one of our favorite guests.
Oh, you're just saying that.
No, it's really true for me anyway. So just a reminder, Daniel is our director of worship here at Faith Community Church.
Yep.
We are a church outside of Boston, and we have a couple of campuses, and I love, Daniel knows this, but I love watching him play and lead us in worship. There's nothing like it. In my past life, jokingly I say that I was a musician in my past life. It feels like that now in my 60s. I just love watching you up there leading us. You really help bring the worshiper out in me. And plus, I think the music you produce is amazing. So
thank you. And praise God.
Yeah, exactly. And I know you do. So I just wanted to ask you first off, because, it might strike people, well, you obviously do music professionally.
Yes.
Which just means that it's your vocation, you're paid for this.
Yes.
And you do it beyond the church, obviously, too, right?
That's right.
Yeah. So how does this work for you, or does it work for you? Maybe it does sometimes and not others, that you actually can go to that space of playing music playfully, shall we say, not like thinking, oh, I've got to do it a certain way, perform up to a certain bar. And again, just to remind people, our podcasters out there, that our podcast listeners, I should say, we actually define play as getting into a recreative space, a refreshing, it's a place of refreshing. So how does that work for you professionally versus doing music completely for enjoyment?
So we're starting out with a really hard question for me.
Okay,
I will say, no, that's fine. We're about, having conversations anyway.
Yeah.
So full transparency, music, it's tougher for me to talk about music as a spiritual practice of play than it is for motorcycles for me.
Yep.
Because of what you just said, it is my vocation. I get paid for this, whether it's in ministry or outside in the world making music for other artists or for myself. And oftentimes it can be very easy to find yourself in a place where you just think, this is work. Because it is.
It is, yeah.
Music becomes work.
Right.
And I often tell people how my dad used to tell me when I was a kid, you love music now, but if you really pursue it as a career, one day you're going to realize it's work, just like anything else.
Yep.
And just like anybody else with plumbing or engineering, they might like what they do, but it will eventually be work.
Yep.
So I actually did have a period of time where music was strictly work. There was no play. There was no Sabbath in it. It was just work.
Yeah.
Because I just listened to too much music. I have to learn too many songs.
Yeah.
It became a burden. And Pastor Dorian, who is the executive pastor of the church that we work at, he actually had to sit me down and say, well, you're feeling so much burnout. There has to be something wrong here. It's either God is telling you step away from this, or God is trying to tell you to pause and find God in it. Mm-hmm. And I really wrestled with God about this. And Dorian actually started out with saying, look, you're on staff full-time, 40 hours a week. Mm-hmm. What is do you even jam? And every time people say that, I laugh because nobody jams. Nobody jams anymore. And it's just not something you do.
Okay.
Maybe as a kid, maybe as a teenager I did with my friends, but not anymore. I just laugh and I scoff at the thought of jamming with someone. But he goes, well, okay, but like, what do you do? What brought you joy in music in the first place? And it was, messing with pedals. It was just playing random things and discovering, exploring different types of sounds and different types of chord progressions. And he's like, oh, well, okay, then do that. Why don't you spend 2 hours of your work week?
Yeah.
Just hide yourself in a room, plug in all your pedals, and just fall in love with the music that you make. Oh, it's not about the money. It's not about, being perfect. It's just enjoying what you're creating.
Yeah.
And through that process, I started to see God in how he delights in what he makes mm-hmm. and what he has made. Mm-hmm. And it goes back to even creation, how he then takes a rest and just goes, this is good,
Yeah.
And then he just stops.
Yeah.
Moves on to the next thing, or he just rests. And the similarity in that was when I could plug all my pedals in, there's a thing called a looper pedal where you basically record yourself for a short period of time and it just kind of plays in a loop.
Okay.
And then you can build on it and record more stuff on it. And then you just kind of have this stack of, things that you've recorded in the last couple takes. And you can sit back and enjoy all the stacks and what you just made. Wow. And that started my journey to go, okay, music is not all about work. I have to have that discipline of going, work is work, but play is play.
Yeah.
And slowly realizing that, wow, music is enjoyable. Mm-hmm. And I'd be lying if I say that it's still, it's not tough anymore. It is tough.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Nate, our, I guess, producer of this podcast.
Right.
He's been on this podcast a couple of times,
yep.
right? But I tell Nate all the time, it's still tough for me to listen to music just to enjoy it.
Yeah.
It takes a lot and very specific types of music for me to really disengage mm-hmm. and get lost in the song or the music or the craft.
Yeah.
But it's a good place to be in once you are able to, or once I am able to detach myself mm-hmm, and mm-hmm. just focus on delighting myself in the art.
Yeah. Wow. I love that because, again, you're admitting, and hopefully, like you said, it could be a plumber, it could be an engineer. You may love your job, you may be passionate about your work, but it's very difficult to then enjoy your work as a type of play too.
Yes.
So thank you you described that so well, and then also the wonderful advice you were given by Dorian to mm-hmm. how to detach, what to do to detach, and then having the discipline, and mm-hmm. yes, that can be a dirty word, but having the discipline to actually detach and going back and literally recreating mm-hmm. Yourself, recreating in music, rediscovering, re-experiencing mm-hmm. for you what the fun and joy is in music, mm-hmm. And just getting in touch with that again. Yeah, that's really a very real experience. So thank you for that.
Yeah. Sometimes I get a little jealous because I look at some people on our worship team who is earlier on in their journey with music.
Yeah.
and you teach them, this is another way to play this chord, and their whole face lights up.
Yeah.
And such a simple thing really changes their world. And I'm a little jealous of how, simple things can make someone feel that way.
Yeah.
It takes a lot more now for me to feel that way, but yeah, sometimes I'm a little jealous.
Yeah, but that makes sense. That makes perfect sense. Yeah. So may God continue to help you play with pedals.
Oh, amen.
Like that, play with pedals. I think that should be a T-shirt or something. Yeah.
Well, it's funny because right before the podcast, we were talking about our T-shirt.
Yes.
I have an Eventide T-shirt on. That's the brand of pedal that I really like. They make pedals and all other sorts of things, but yeah.
So that's the shout out to the motorcycles podcast, right? Are these pedals for motorcycles? Or
no, they are actually for music.
Oh my gosh. Duh. That's great. Oh, that's perfect.
That's
okay.
funny.
Yeah. Sorry. I immediately am going to motorcycles again. So yeah, that's really cool.
Well, we can go back to that if you want.
Yeah. Well, we will in a few minutes, but I wanted to ask you again, just to, I think you might have referenced this in another podcast, but I wanted you to just kind of tell our listeners and viewers about your journey through music. Like, start when you were young. How you first discovered music was something for you that was a passion, and then kind of how you grew into it being your vocation.
Cool. I will give you the Cliff Notes.
Yeah.
Because that's a long journey.
Because you are so old, Daniel.
Oh,
I'm kidding.
My gosh. I do feel like I have accomplished a lot of stuff that I wanted to accomplish in a somewhat short amount of time.
Yep.
So I do feel, yeah. Anyway, we'll get into that.
Yeah, okay.
So it's my dad is very musical.
Yeah.
He is a civil engineer.
Wow.
But he loves music.
Okay.
Like someone who is so appreciative of the nuances in music. He really has the ability to, find those little nuggets in a song, whether it's in the lyrics or the rhyme scheme, what have you, right?
Yeah.
And he would play a lot of David Cassidy. I don't know. Yeah, David Cassidy.
That's...
Part of your family.
I'm probably your dad's era, so of course I know David Cassidy. Yeah.
So David Cassidy, Cliff Richards, if you know,
sure.
Yeah. So a lot of that stuff he would play in the car, play at home. He just loves music.
Wow.
He plays guitar. He plays a little bit of keyboard. He sings as well. He knows some drums. He loves music.
Yeah.
He forced my older sister and I, to play the piano.
Okay.
And I think I was probably maybe 4 or something like that, and I started singing the harmony part to a song that he was jamming out with my sister. And,
when you were 4, you started singing the harmony part.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
And he just went, where did that come from?
Yeah, really.
Like, how do you even know the harmony part?
Yep.
I don't know.
Yeah.
God-given.
Yes,
right?
Absolutely.
And then slowly, fast forward, I really liked the piano. I didn't like the classical piano pieces. I just liked playing the pop songs.
Yep.
And then a little funny story. My dad used to tell me, you only play the piano. It's not portable. If you play guitar, you can be on the beach somewhere and you can bring your guitar with you and, impress all the girls.
Oh, gosh. He knew how to get to you, right?
And I was like, no, like piano is better than guitar, whatever. And one day I had nothing to do. I was really bored. So I said, I'm going to show my dad off. I took a guitar. I went to the piano. And I'm like, oh, the C chord is C, E, and G. Then all I have to do is just figure out what these strings are and figure out what to fret, right?
Wow.
So I taught myself 4 chords. And he came home from work and I said, Dad, look, guitar is easy. So I showed him the 4 chords that I learned just by doing that. And he dropped everything and went, okay, let me teach you more chords. That went on. I started dabbling in songwriting. I was not good at it. Nobody's good at it when you start
Initially,
out.
right, yeah.
But I just tried and did different things. It really helped that girls did like
Yeah, absolutely.
guys who play guitar, whatever.
Yeah.
So in middle school and high school, I was always like, I gotta play guitar. I gotta whatever. Stupid teeny things. And then I eventually got recognized in the industry. So I've had experiences with record labels. I went on to tour the world. I went on to tour as a professional artist and as a hired gun, being hired by other bands, other artists.
Yeah.
And I also did some film scoring. I did jingle writing. I did a lot of stuff.
So fun.
Yeah.
So fun.
The goal as a kid was to always be like my favorite band at the time, Paramore. Right. I guess still favorite band.
Yeah.
And I'm always like, I want to be in a punk band. I want to do alt rock. And I did that for a little bit, quite a little bit. And then moving here for college, I went to Berklee College of Music.
Yeah.
And I just continued networking, continued doing all that stuff.
Wow.
And I've tried the tour bus life. I've tried the private jet touring life.
Oh my gosh.
Like I've had a fair share of experiences that, to this point, it's a little bit like, what's next, God?
Yeah, because you have had so many experiences that many musicians really would like to have, dream of having. Right. Yeah. Tell us a little bit about how you were first recognized, either brought onto a label. Like, how did that happen?
I was singing, I believe, the national anthem at some kind of event.
Yeah.
It was like a public park, and someone who used to be an artist, but really wanted to start producing, was there.
Wow.
And then next thing you know, we had a meeting, or my dad and I had a meeting with him. Wow. And then,
And I assume you're talking about the national anthem of Malaysia?
Malaysia, that's right. Where I'm from, where I grew up.
Which is cool, yeah. So again, being at the right place at the right time, kind of, right?
Yeah.
That is really fun, Daniel.
I would say the music industry is a lot different now. You rarely get to see that happen today.
Really?
Yeah.
How come? I mean, I'm sure that's a big story, but why don't you see that happen today?
Labels they function differently now.
Okay.
With everything the way it is with social media, you've got Spotify, you've got music,
true.
All these platforms. TikTok is a huge one.
Right.
If you are able to market yourself now, then you don't really need a label to do that for you, because they were doing that.
Yeah.
People have, very what's the word I'm looking for? Maybe niche deals, if you will. So you don't have to have a full-on deal of being the artist and the publication and the whatever merch. You can just choose to get a publishing deal.
Right.
And do the rest yourself.
Yeah. Wow.
And keep, all the money to yourself.
Yeah, right.
I mean, not like streaming, you get a lot of money anyway. But
yeah, exactly.
And, okay, there's a lot of details that we don't have to go into, but it is
different. Thank you for, now I kind of get the idea of how that's different. Tell us, how also your passion for worship, being a worship leader, playing worship music, how that kind of came about too.
I did grow up. I started going to church when I was about 12. My dad brought us to church, and I just started going. Finally gave my heart to Jesus, gave my life to Jesus when I was about 15. And God really transformed my view of being a musician.
Cool.
It went from, I'm the rock star, I am the coolest person on the block, I'm better than everyone else, to, wow, there's actually a purpose to my gifts.
Wow.
And yes, I should worship God and use my gift as an offering to God.
Yep.
But also at the same time, I can be salt and light, as the Bible says that we should be.
Yes.
In the world.
Yep.
With my art. So it became, okay, what kind of songs can I write about? Switchfoot is a great example.
Yeah,
I also grew up in the Switchfoot
era.
And it's really about, it's not so much like shoving Jesus down people's throats,
right,
but just showing the hope that he's given you in your music.
Mm-hmm.
And it could be about a breakup.
Sure.
But it could be laced with the hope that is in Jesus Christ.
Right.
And so it really started out there. And I must say, the church that I eventually started going to, it wasn't my parents' church.
Yeah.
It was a church that I eventually called my home back in Malaysia. They had a great system to keep musicians in the industry accountable.
Mm-hmm.
My mentor, who was the teens pastor of that church, is actually a rock star of his own right.
Wow.
He was on MTV World Stage.
Wow.
He opened for Switchfoot. Like,
wow.
He's kind of a big time, singer, and he's got his own kind of testimony of how his band actually got their one worship song on national radio because the DJ messed up, and that one Christian song actually was 7.5 minutes long. And I think the lyric was something like "Jesus reigns" over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And to play that in Malaysia, predominantly Muslim country.
Oh my gosh.
For the DJ to make him anyway.
Whoa.
I digress. I digress.
But wow.
They had a great mentoring system. There were a lot of artists, a lot of bands in the industry in that church.
Yeah.
And the lead pastor took it upon himself to start a small group, to make sure there were systems in place to help keep people accountable and deepen their faith.
Yeah.
So it was great, and
wow.
that really shaped my faith and my perspective of my purpose as a musician.
Yeah. Boy, what a powerful discipleship is very specific to your gifts.
Mm-hmm.
That's so cool. And I'm sure that just comes through in your discipling others now in music and in worship. Yeah. That is powerful. I love how God does that. You don't even know, you kind of fall into it. And God's like got it all set up that, no, I'm going to make sure that you are trained well, trained well in using your gifts, but also glorifying me with your gifts. And that doesn't, I'm not saying that at all, like you have to only play Christian music. I don't believe that. But that, you really are being accountable. That is so powerful. Wow. Okay, so I love when I see your posts on Facebook and Instagram, especially when you're, playing and I think typically the ones I'm seeing are you're in the studio and riffing. And I think what I love, especially why I'm drawn to them is, well, because of you, but also because it feels like I see you get in a zone, like a creative zone. Maybe I'm just putting that on you, Daniel, but what's that like to get into that place where, so when I see you, it almost looks like you're wonderfully lost in that creative place. And again, I'm probably idealizing it, but what's that like for you, and how do you get there? And is that something too that helps you more go into that sense of play with music, of you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Practicing that's,
I think flow state is kind of like the maybe more used terms now.
Thank you. Flow state. I like that. Yeah.
Nate would say when he's like editing videos, he's in like flow
state.
Zone, flow state.
Okay.
I don't know. Anyway, so in those videos especially, if you're talking about the studio videos, it's really kind of a sneak peek behind the curtain of what really happens in a session.
Yep.
We never fabricate a moment. It's not like, okay, we're going to put the camera on and we're going to pretend this or like do this.
Yeah.
It's sometimes I even just leave the camera right there and it can be filming for 30 minutes straight.
Right.
And I'll go back and you know, mentally remember, oh, that moment's a great moment to showcase.
Yes.
So yeah, nothing is fabricated. It's all organically happening.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's kind of the beauty of collaboration in the studio.
Yeah.
But also in like what you're saying about how I'm lost in playing, right? There's a lot of intentionality in playing or in working a studio session, especially, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, you need to have intentionality when you play music, period.
Right.
But personally, I think in a live setting, if you make a mistake, that moment's gone.
Yeah.
In a studio, you make a mistake, that moment is recorded till the end of time, unless you delete the take.
Plus, you're paying for it.
Yeah.
I mean, there's that too, right?
Yes, yeah.
You're paying for that time and that space.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
And as a studio musician, the headspace is you are almost given a blank canvas, or you're given a canvas that's, you know, partially filled. And they say, we like your style of art. Now help us, you know, fill up these spaces.
Okay.
You've got, whatever, 6 spots.
Right.
You know, fill in the paint the way you want it, but here's the boundary.
Yeah.
And you have to be so intentional with your note choices, the rhythms, right? Even down to, like, we talk about pedals. Pedals shape the tone of your instrument.
Right.
If you're playing the drums, the type of stick you use, how hard you hit the drum, you know, there's just so many different things that it's really like a language. You are speaking.
You are.
In music.
Absolutely, yeah.
And there's a producer that I work with a lot, Brian Fenley. Love that guy. And he would always tell me, like, he would stop the music and just go, okay, like, play me the lyrics. Like, think of the lyrics and just play that.
Yeah.
And we'll come out with the tone, come up with the part that will, like, if somehow we lost all the lyrics, we could still convey that emotion with one guitar part.
That's a great way to put it, right? Yeah.
Right, or the bass part even.
Yep.
And there's a term called prosody in music. It's when your lyrics, your chords, your melody, and all the instrumentation all are in line with each other.
Nice.
Yeah.
Ooh.
So, like, let's say you're talking about someone making you feel good.
Yeah.
And they bring your energy higher, let's say. So then there's a crescendo in the drums.
Yeah.
There's a crescendo in the bass. The guitar starts playing higher, you know. And the melody also goes higher. Like, there's a kind of alignment.
Absolutely, yeah.
So that's intentionality in the studio space.
Right.
But I also think about artists who, let's say, sculptors, right?
Yes.
Here you are, clay. Now make something of it.
Yeah.
Now what the heck do you make?
Exactly.
Right? From this blob of clay and dirt and things, and you create a beautiful piece of, I don't know, a cup or a plate or something, right?
Yeah.
And now you get to paint.
Yes.
You get to decide what kind of patterns are on it. Like, that part of it is also intentionality, but instead of for someone else, it's kind of between you and the art.
Yes, it is.
So you kind of just, and I'm a huge subscriber to the idea that you don't create the art already exists.
Yeah, yes.
You kind of are a conduit or a vessel, and you start to realize what this art wants to be or should be.
Right.
And you help make that happen.
I firmly believe that too. I love how you said that. Absolutely. Wow. So when I say I love seeing you in that space of being lost in the studio, and which sounds very frivolous and like you're just not thinking of anything. So you are being very intentional.
Yes.
You have to know where you're going, what lyrics you're representing. I mean, the nuances to the music, using pedals, using everything. So it is very intentional.
Yes.
Is there... so what was that word? Plausibility or
prosody?
Prosody. When you get into the space of prosody, I assume do you know it? Do you kind of feel it in that moment? Or does it sometimes you only hear it later?
It can be both.
Okay, yeah. What is that like, being in that moment or hearing that moment?
A huge sense of accomplishment and relief.
Yeah, that's true, right? Because your intentionality has paid off. Yeah.
Yes.
That is really neat, really neat. But again, so we're talking about play here. We're talking about refreshing and renewing. Is any of that refreshing and renewing? And you can say no, because you are being super intentional and you're paying for time in a studio and you're doing it as work. Is any of that?
It usually always is.
Okay.
It's hard for me. I think going back to like our last episode, the huge like perfectionist in me,
yes,
would not be able to put a stamp with my name on anything if I am not happy with it.
Right.
And so there's two parts to it. The first part, if you think of like going back to creation and how God said it was good, and then he walked away.
Right.
He didn't say it was perfect.
Right.
He said it was good,
right.
and then he walked away. It's the same thing with music for work. At the end, you'll hear, wow, this is really good. And you can always make something more perfect.
Right.
And then when it's more perfect, you realize you can make something more perfect.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's never perfect.
And where do you stop? Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So you say, that's good.
Yeah.
You walk away and you delight in the goodness of that moment.
Yes.
And that is when it switches to go from work to play. There are a lot of songs that I've worked on that I still listen to. Well, some of them I actually really love.
Yep.
Not because I played on it, but because you can hear the teamwork, the team effort, the kind of hive mind mentality behind the art.
Yeah.
And go, that's just beautiful. And then, of course, there's the other part. Like, I was talking about some of our volunteers who just the slightest, simplest things in music makes their face light up.
Yeah.
Because it's this big aha moment. It's the same way when I listen to something and I don't expect it and it hits me different and now it's beautiful and I go, whoa. Well, go back for a second.
Yeah.
How did we get there?
Yeah.
Like a good example is Jacob Collier. He's a musician, multi-instrumentalist. He sings. He's just phenomenal.
Yeah.
I highly recommend checking his stuff out.
Okay.
Little Blue is probably one of my most favorite songs of his.
Wow.
And he is notorious for, first of all, his theory knowledge is just bonkers.
Wow.
He's got just this depth of knowledge that I don't know how he is so knowledgeable. It's crazy. And not only that, he is really into microtonal stuff, which is like notes between notes. Yes. And he uses those microtonal stuff to change keys, to like affect emotion. It's a science to it.
Yeah.
Now, that kind of scientific approach to music and being able to use scientific approach to music to make that beautiful and still seamless is incredible to me. And that's when I go, whoa.
Oh, man.
This is just beautiful. I don't know how you did this.
Right.
But it's beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's kind of the play element that is non-work at all.
Yeah. Oh, you described it so well. And to give Jacob Collier as an example too, and how he, obviously thinks about and plays with and then creates this beauty out of microtonal stuff is amazing. Yeah. So you talked a little bit about, or you referenced a little bit about being in the studio playing with a group. Talk about communal, how is being in community, playing music, also, how does that heighten play? How does that encourage play? I mean, so you gave the example of prosody. Prosody. Oh my gosh. Okay. Prosody. You gave the example of when prosody happens. So that's a huge communal piece of how you can enter that play space together. But can you tell us a little bit more about being in community, playing music, and being refreshed by community and renewed by community?
This is my favorite part of music.
Okay.
Hands down.
Yeah.
So two parts to it. The first part of the communal aspect, I always think of, I think it's Megan DeFranza, who wrote about her view of what it means to be created in the image of God. And she was saying, some people think it's the ability to be logical or to be able to rationalize with others or whatever. And she was making a case that it's actually the Trinity. When you look at the Trinity, three different components, if you will,
personalities,
make up one God, right? And it's really how they can be in relationship with each other and have harmony.
Yeah.
So to be made in the image of God, it is to be with other people, be in relationship with other people, and live in harmony with others despite being different.
Right.
I love that. That was very life-changing for me.
Yeah.
And then you look at music and you go, the drums and the bass guitar have pretty much nothing in common.
Right.
But you put that together and you realize, wow, if the bass guitar and the kick drum, are in sync, it's so much more powerful.
Right.
And then you look at the harmonic and tonal qualities of two guitars.
Right.
And how they could complement each other, play different melodies or different parts. And now you have this huge sounding, piece of art made out of two or not three guitars or whatever.
Right.
And you have the keyboard in there, and it's just... And now you add into the concept that people are different. And if you're playing together and using music as a way of communicating, like language we talked about, now you realize you're really speaking to each other, just not with words. And sure, you might be playing Taylor Swift or something.
Yeah.
And I do play in some wedding bands over here, and here in New England.
Yeah.
And I must say it is mighty fun because, well, I don't think the wedding party or people at the wedding know, but there are people who play for like Snoop Dogg and Usher.
Wow.
And like this one drummer I just played with was on tour with Adam Lambert. And like you have all these, high
quality
musicians, very skilled, together playing your run-of-the-mill, whatever, Taylor Swift, and Journey, Don't Stop Believing. And we're able to take those songs and just start, hey, what if I change this chord here? And someone responds with something else.
Exactly.
And you just kind of bring this creativity out of people in that live setting.
Right.
And like I was saying earlier, it's a live moment. It's fleeting. It's gone.
Right.
So you live through it. You live in that moment with these people.
Yeah.
And wedding bands, even studio stuff, most times I don't know who I'm working with.
Wow. I mean, even in a studio?
Yeah.
Really? Okay.
So it's the first time I'm meeting the artist.
Oh, that makes sense.
Right.
Okay, yeah.
Or in a live band situation, sometimes I only know one person. Sometimes I don't even know anybody.
Right.
I just get the call. I show up and I do the gig, and we have a ton of fun.
Yeah.
And oftentimes, I hate to admit, I go home going, wow, that sax player is amazing. What was his name again?
Yeah, that's right. I love it.
And so that communal aspect
Yeah.
is phenomenal. Being with people who you can communicate without communicating.
Yeah.
Or rather, with through music,
Yes.
not with English.
Yeah.
And then I wish I had a keyboard or something here.
Yep.
But the second aspect in music, in community, that is also reflected, is this is a bit of music theory. If you play, maybe if you're a musician, you can go play it back home and try it out. If you play a major 7 chord, so if you're playing a C major 7 chord, that's C, E, G, B, right?
Yep.
If you played just the C and the B, that makes that the major 7.
Right.
So technically you are a semitone or a half step apart.
Right.
If you played a C and a B right next to each other, maybe if I can do that, it sounds disgusting.
Yeah.
Like, it sounds so ugly. Like, this is what it sounds like.
Right. Right.
You know? And it's so dissonant. It's so ugly. Nobody really wants it.
Yeah.
But then if you added a 5th, oh, that was horrible. Don't play piano app on whatever. It actually, you realize that the 5th, the G, starts to make the B, the semitone apart, a little sweeter.
Yes.
And then you add the E in there, which is the 3rd.
Yeah.
And now you have this major 7, because
Right.
your 3rd, your E tells you it's a major.
Yep.
Your B tells you it's a major 7.
Right.
And now this dissonant B and C thing that's usually disgusting ends up being the prettiest thing in the world.
Oh, gosh. Such a good example, Daniel. Yeah.
And so when you look at community and you look at dissonance and you look at, like, not all dissonance is bad.
No.
Not all disagreements in real life is bad too.
Right.
So even in playing
Right.
with other people and being playful in how you change your chords and how you choose to add dissonance intentionally,
Yes.
in a playful time with other musicians, you can then respond with more dissonance that's, playful. And it's just such an amazing way to be in community, to play with each other.
It's a fantastic description of how community can work at its best, right?
Yeah.
And, dissonance might sound, like you said, ugly or awful, and yet you put other chords or other notes around it, other people with other gifts around it, and now you've got something that's filled out and astoundingly beautiful at times. That is, what a great example.
Going back to what Jacob Collier would say,
Yeah.
he would say there's no such thing as a wrong note.
Yep.
It all depends on the context.
Yes.
Where you're coming from and where you're going to.
That's right.
And how you surround that one so-called wrong note with the other chords or other notes in that chord. So if you give it context, that note will never be wrong.
Correct. Yeah.
And it's naive of me to think, but it's kind of like life. You need context, but it's also like scripture. You need context.
Always.
You can't just read the one note or the one scripture.
Right.
You
exactly.
Yeah.
Right. Just thinking about dissonance in that way, the C and the B notes right together, and how, with context scripturally, if you read something out of context, it can look horrible or feel horrible.
Yeah.
But if you put it in the broad context of the whole Bible, looking at it, it's like, this makes more sense. And it melts. That was a great description of play in community as far as music is concerned, and the joy of it, the beauty of it, and that's just a microcosm of an example of the Trinity, right? Because the Trinity is so vast and personalities. So tell us too about some of the music you mentioned Jacob Collier, but what music and musicians do you enjoy listening to? Not for work, but for play.
Well, Jacob Collier is one of them.
Okay.
I am the biggest fan of Paramore.
Paramore, that's
a band,
Yep.
I feel like, I'll go in phases. I listen to a lot of Paramore,
Yeah.
and then I'll step away because it's a lot of Paramore.
Yeah.
But I just love the band.
Yeah.
I love who they are. I love their personalities. Their live shows are incredible.
Wow.
I think all my favorite concerts were Paramore concerts.
Yeah.
And who else? There's Snarky Puppy. Snarky Puppy's
I love the title just right there. Yeah.
Yeah, they're like a fusion jazz band.
Okay.
Or fusion, I guess.
Yeah.
No, that is a great band that I recommend because they are able to take such complex jazz approaches and make it so mainstream.
Wow.
So you listen to it and it feels good. You are along for the journey, along for the ride, but you don't realize how difficult it was to write that music.
Wow, that's amazing.
So,
yeah.
And it's one of those bands where you can listen to it 100 times and realize you haven't, actually listened to everything in there and realize there's more to pick out from. There's that. And then there's like Tori Kelly, JoJo. I do like Kelly Clarkson. Justin McCartney. Yeah. There's, Sabrina Carpenter is actually kind of one of my favorites too.
Really?
There's some, run-of-the-mill pop artists that I like listening to. Yeah.
What is it about Kelly Clarkson that you like? Can you just being put on the spot?
That is just the simple fact that I had her Breakaway record, her CD.
Yeah.
I'm old enough to have CDs.
Yeah, that's it.
And I would put the CD in my CD player every night, and it would be on loop.
Oh, wow.
And I would fall asleep to the CD, and I would wake up, and of course it would be, still playing. So there was that. And also just her voice is amazing.
Yeah, wow.
She does, what is it called? Karaoke, something like that. Her Kelly Clarkson show.
Yeah.
She's got a segment where she does covers.
Yes.
And also her band is phenomenal.
Wow.
And she'll do like these covers of, Journey or what have you. And it's so good because she's so good and her band's so tight.
Yeah.
It's just fun to watch.
Oh, that's great. That's really great. So one last thing I want to, just because the last podcast was about motorcycles and you playing as you ride and do track. Are there similarities to you in playing with music? And again, I'm referencing the spiritual practice of play, refreshment through music and refreshment through riding motorcycles.
Yes. Now, let's just take the work component of music away.
Yes.
And just make that completely just about play.
Right.
The one thing I actually do merge them together is when I go on the scenic Zen rides on the street, the nice backcountry roads where there's no cars, it's just you and kind of nature-y. I love putting atmospheric music.
Oh, yeah.
Or like a chill playlist. I guess chill playlist is subjective to people.
Right.
But what is a chill playlist to me? Yeah. I would love to, I do love to listen to just that and go on the ride.
Right. Wow.
It adds to the Zen.
Yes, it does. It does, yeah.
But in many ways, too, there's a sense of freedom. I feel like motorcyclists always tell you, oh, ride a motorcycle is so freeing. It really is.
Yes, yeah.
But also, when you are able to, like you said, yeah, discipline is kind of a bad word, but when you are disciplined enough to get yourself to a place where music theory, playing an instrument is just an extension of who you are
Right.
and your body, it is very freeing.
Yep.
Because now you can express yourself with melody,
Yes.
with chords, with harmonic content, with
Right.
rhythm. It's just so freeing in that way. And especially in the times when you go into prayer, you just have no words.
Yep.
I just pick up an instrument.
Right.
And that's my prayer.
Absolutely.
God already knows how I feel.
Right, right.
But also, you know, you are expressing yourself, and God hears and sees all of that.
Yep.
So there is a lot of similarities in that way. Yeah. And of course the community aspect.
Yes.
Riding bikes with friends,
Yeah.
going on the track with friends, or playing music with people.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. But even thinking about, because motorcycles are totally foreign to me. I mean, I know what they are, but, and getting really taken up in the way you described, especially riding track.
Yeah.
The Zen I can kind of imagine, but riding track and all like the physics and the intentionality,
Yeah.
the very like small things you need to do to make something go right, you know, take
Correct.
a curve, whatever.
Yeah.
Get on your elbow or whatever. Yeah. But again, and it's so intentional. And so just like you talked about with music too, you practice the intentionality so that you can sometimes become more free.
Yes.
Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
And so that's, I guess, where we would say the discipline pays off,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
That in those moments where you are really free and you can express and connect with the art. Sounds amazing.
I have so much respect for people. I mean, like you were talking about, you know, tending your garden.
Yeah.
Last episode, and like something like that, I'm just like, oh, my hands are dirty, or like I got dirt on me, ew, or my clothes are gonna get dirty. Whatever. It's not like motorcycling isn't dirty.
I was going to say, you get filthy on a motorcycle, so what are you talking about?
I take my wheel off, I touch the chain, I'm like, oh, I saw grease.
Yeah, exactly.
But, whatever. The skill, or even say baking. My mom's a phenomenal baker.
Yeah.
And she's an amazing cook. The art of like how long to put something in the oven for, or like she just has a feel for like how much more butter. Like
the feel is amazing,
Yeah.
in
And
cooking, baking.
it's part like God's given her a gift in that sense, but also just like she's cultivated through discipline, baking and baking, and failing and succeeding. And, you know, eventually, and she'll tell me things like, oh, yeah, you know, the cheesecake, it's whatever, something. And I'm like, what are you talking about? It's delicious.
It's just, no, this wasn't as good. You know, the crust was whatever.
What are you talking about?
I know.
And so, like, putting myself in that position and going, yeah, it does take some work to get you there.
Yes.
Because music can be tough for some, too, when you think about, like, oh, you see some people and it's just so fluid. They can play, you know, these songs and their fingers are just so quick.
Right.
Their coordination between their arms and their legs are, you know, it's easy to compare yourself and then start to get discouraged and then not feel like it's an actual place of rest for you anymore.
Yes. Because you're always in that competition with your, in a sense,
But it's also remembering that art is art. You are still the conduit, still the vessel.
Right.
And you are trying to discover what the art is.
Yeah.
And you are on your own journey with your own art that's been given to you.
Yes.
So,
I needed that I needed you back when I was in college. Because, I think that's the hard thing. I became a music major, and then you realize far more what you're up against in terms of competition. And it's just so discouraging. But to describe it that way, again, brings the... you're still the conduit. You're a unique conduit, right?
Yeah. Yep.
One thing I love, and again, I'm not so biologically oriented, but the idea of a vocalist, and you've got this instrument in your body, and your body is this, totally unique thing, and it houses these vocal cords, and anyway.
Oh yeah.
But again, instead of getting stuck in, I don't sound like thus and so, or I'm not as good, or people aren't attracted to that, instead of, no, what is the art you can make?
Yes.
And you make that's unique, and keep being that conduit. I mean, that's so encouraging and a great focus instead of everybody else out there who's apparently doing so much better. Yeah, exactly.
I'll play a lot of gigs, and sometimes I play jazz, or I'm forced to play jazz at some gigs.
Yep.
And I'm very unapologetic with, I'm not a jazz musician. I don't have the bebop vocabulary like a lot of people do, especially when I'm placed on a gig with like true jazz musicians who live, breathe jazz, right?
Yep.
And I just go, sorry guys, like I can read a chart, and I'll read a chart,
right?
And I can do basic jazz, but don't expect me to be, Miles Davis or someone, but I'll be here.
Yeah.
And it's okay to also know that's not who I'm made to be.
Yes,
I'm made to be XYZ to make that sort of art.
Right.
It's okay to do that too.
It is. It is. It really is. Wow. Daniel, this is so much fun, and I think one reason, beside the fact that I adore you, but also I love talking about the creative process. And of course, I also love talking about spirituality, spiritual formation, and how these two go together, whether it's through motorcycles or music, and getting inside your brain and your experience and your communal experience of creative process puts a lot of pieces together. And I think, and I hope for our audience, encourages people to continue in their ways of play, of their ways of experiencing the joy, the freedom, whether it be pedals or motorcycles or digging in the dirt or baking or whatever, and just enjoying that process, and don't get lost in comparison, which I think most of us do as human beings at some point, and stay with the joy, stay with the delight, and with the prosody. I love that.
Yeah, there you go.
I finally got it, But I mean, that's such a great word and such a great concept, right? Yeah. I think we probably all experience moments of prosody, whether it's in music or something else. And those just are mountaintop experiences, even if for a few minutes. Yeah. So thank you so much. This has been
Laurel.
Great. Twice in a row. Thank you.
No, thank you. You're amazing, Laurel.
Yeah, thank you.
I love talking to you, as always.
Oh, thank you. All right.
Thank you for checking out this episode of Divergent Hope, a podcast produced by Faith Community Church. Wherever you're listening, we invite you to leave a review. We welcome all your feedback. If you want to get connected, visit us at faithma.online.church. See you soon.